It's race week, guys. The Monaco Grand Prix is on this weekend, and just like I do ahead of every single Grand Prix on the calendar, I'm bringing you a compilation video going over the main things that you need to know before this race weekend gets underway, including the most successful drivers over the years here, the fast facts, which drivers you should be looking out for, and whether that new rule at Monaco for the two-stop strategy is going to shake things up. Everything's included in this compilation video, guys, so without further ado, let's dive in. It's race week, guys, and ahead of this weekend's Monaco Grand Prix, I'm going to take a look at the 5 drivers that you should be paying special attention to this weekend. 5 picks for drivers with real storylines that you should be paying attention to during the 2025 Monaco Grand Prix. So let's get going. And where else can we start than other one with the home hero, the defending winner from last season? It's Charles Leclerc. Ferrari look a long way off winning a Grand Prix. However, right now, their performance during race pace is very good, although their pace during qualifying seems pretty bad. They seemed really unable to fire up the tyres at Imola last weekend, and if that does happen this weekend where Monaco has such an importance on qualifying, I think they're going to really struggle to get points. Yeah, they scythed their way through the field, running the alternate strategy with Hamilton, Leclerc with just some pure pace. Got 4th and 6th when, they started in 11th and 12th, which is seriously impressive, but they're going to need a miracle round here, in my opinion. But if anybody can produce that, it's Charles Leclerc. Was it 2021 where he qualified on pole despite crashing out, of course, was unable to take the start of the race, but still managed to get pole position? He's had a lot of bad luck here over the years, has Charles Leclerc, but also has a lot of good memories from 12 months ago. So he's someone that I'm going to be keeping a close eye on. I think he's an outside shot for a podium, particularly if he pulls off another one-lap masterclass around the streets of his hometown. We'll have to see what happens. But let's talk about Franco Colapinto next. Now, there's been a lot of controversy around Colapinto, not for him himself, but a lot of controversy around his fans. I've got a separate video going over that. Alpine and the FIA have responded to these less than savoury comments from some of his fans, but we'll park that to one side. Let's talk about Colapinto, the driver himself, because he didn't have a great second debut in Formula 1. His first ever race for Alpine didn't really go to plan. He crashed out at the end of Q1. Now, he was looking pretty quick, Flavio Briatore, who is now, of course, his team principal, maybe on a temporary basis, maybe on a permanent basis, who knows at this point, but Flav is the team principal, and he basically said that Franco can, he can stay the whole season. All he's got to do is drive fast, not crash the car, and something else. I can't remember what the other one was. Just basically, head down, rear end up, get on with it. And unfortunately, even though he did look pretty quick at times during qualifying, he did crash the car pretty heavily through the Tamburello chicane. And of course, the streets of Monaco do not take any prisoners. You go wide here, you're losing a wheel, you're losing a wing, your suspension's broken. It's very, very easy to crash around here. And with how high pressure things are at Alpine in general, and how high pressure and intense things are around Monaco, I think he's going to do well to keep his nose clean during this. Not just during qualifying, but also during the race. But we'll have to see. It's his first time racing in Formula 1 around Monaco. Miracles can happen here. If he pulls off an incredible qualifying performance and, keeps it there for the race, he is in with a shot of points, of course, but that is a big ask around this track. Let's talk about another guy who crashed during qualifying as well, Yuki Tsunoda. Now, that Red Bull looks, again, very quick. I mean, in the hands of Max Verstappen, absolutely unstoppable at Imola. But, credit to Tsunoda. He went from the pit lane up to, 10th at the end. I know he got points at Imola, which is seriously impressive with all things considered. He just needs a solid qualifying session, but again, when things are so high pressure in qualifying in general because of the time gaps being so small, it's going to be difficult for him to actually pull off a very strong points finish, I think, round here. Of course, stranger things have happened. I really rate him as a driver. I think he's a very, very talented driver, but it's going to be tough. We'll have to see how he gets on. I think getting into Q3, that would be a satisfactory performance by Yuki Tsunoda in the Red Bull. Another guy who is likely to be featuring in Q3, though, is Alex Albon. He has been absolutely incredible so far this season. I saw a stat, or a graph, I should say, going over his last 4 seasons, I believe, in Formula 1. And up until this point, up until 2025, he barely even scored a point in the opening 7 rounds of each of those seasons in 22, 23, and 24. However, in 25, he's on 40 points right now, something around there. He's well inside the top 10. I don't want to say he's carrying Williams because I think that's very disrespectful to Carlos Sainz, but right now, the top dog in that team has to be Alex Albon. Another incredible performance at Imola, up in 5th, beating a Ferrari again on pure pace. He was fantastic. If he gets a good qualifying around Monaco, he is an outside shot for a top 5. I really do believe that. Carlos Sainz as well has had some brilliant results here over the years for Ferrari and McLaren. I'm sure he finished 2nd here in 21 for Ferrari, something like that. He's come close to victory before, but yeah, we'll see what happens with him. I'm really looking forward to see how he gets on. And I'm also looking forward to seeing Oscar Piastri. Now, McLaren, believe it or not, have not won a Monaco Grand Prix since 2008. It was Sir Lewis Hamilton back in the days of the Vodafone Chrome McLaren, the Chrome McLaren original layout, of course. The original paint scheme, I should say, on that car. Beautiful car. Love the Papaya now, but that is just so nostalgic for me personally. But can Papaya get to the top of the podium for potentially the first time ever? I don't know if they've ever won around Monaco with the Papaya paint scheme. I know they have back in the cigarette brand here. I'm not going to say the name for obvious reasons. The white and red livery won a lot round here in the hands of Alan Prost and Ayrton Senna. But can Piastri do it? Well, if he gets pole position, he's got every chance. Even with an incredible Max Verstappen dive around the outside, I don't really see him pulling off something like that. There's just simply not the room around Saint Devote to do something like that. So if he gets pole position, Piastri, I back him heavily for a victory. He'll be wounded a bit after Imola. Not only beaten by Max Verstappen all ends up, but also beaten by his teammate as well. That is going to irk him. He won 3 races before that in a row. I think he's going to get another victory this weekend. He's my personal pick for victory around the Principality, especially since Lando Norris just doesn't seem able to do it in qualifying, and we know how important qualifying is around Monaco. But yeah, those are the 5 drivers I've picked out to pay a special attention to this weekend, guys. What are your choices? Let us know in the comments below. Alright guys, it's race week. The Monaco Grand Prix is on this weekend, so ahead of the race, let's have a look at the fast facts. As many fast facts about the 2025 Monaco Grand Prix as I can get through in less than 5 minutes. Let's go! The race sees the highest lap count of any event on the calendar, with 78 tours of the circuit forming the Monaco Grand Prix. However, it's the only race that does not adhere to the FIA's mandated 305 kilometers minimum distance, measuring 260.286 kilometers. This is because of the time that it would take to complete 100 laps, which is what you would need to do a Grand Prix distance around here. A tighter and narrower pit lane than most F1 tracks means that Monaco is one of only 3 circuits on the calendar in 2025 to run a pit lane speed of 60 kilometers an hour rather than the usual 80. The other 2 are Zandvoort and Singapore. Monaco, along with Jeddah, has the most number of right-hand turns on the F1 calendar, with 11. Interesting. For this 82nd edition of the Monaco Grand Prix, a 2-stop strategy will be mandatory for all teams. The softer C4, C5 and C6 tyre compounds will be used on the streets of the Principality, 1 step softer than last year. Hopefully both of those things result in a more entertaining race overall. From 7 races in F1's inaugural race season in 1950, only 4 of them remain on the calendar in 2025. The British, Monaco, Belgian and Italian Grand Prix. All 4 races take place on the same circuits today as they did 75 years ago: Silverstone, Monaco, Spa-Francorchamps and Monza. The first ever Monaco Grand Prix was organised in 1929 by Anthony Noge. The final corner of the circuit is named in his honour. The 1996 event holds the record for the race with the fewest ever finishers. Only podium scorers Olivier Panis, David Coulthard and Johnny Herbert finished that race. Mercedes-Benz Power has won 12 of the last 25 Monaco Grand Prix, with McLaren, Brawn and Mercedes. With 3 victories around the streets of the Principality, Lewis Hamilton is the most successful driver on the current grid at Monaco, with 3 victories in 2008, 2016 and 2019. Fernando Alonso and Max Verstappen have 2 wins apiece, and Charles Leclerc has 1. There you go, guys. I mean, that's probably a record time overall. All the fast facts you need ahead of the Monaco Grand Prix in this video. Are you looking forward to the race? Who is your pick for the winner this time? And check out our plenty of other preview content in the build up to this one, guys. There's loads of stuff going out on the channel, as this is one of my favorite races of the year. I love Monaco, I personally do. I know the racing isn't the most entertaining, but I just love the spectacle of it, and there's always drama, there's always a storyline there, so hopefully we'll get more of the same in 2025, with hopefully a sprinkling of more overtakes on track. Alright guys, it's race week. The 2025 Monaco Grand Prix is on this weekend, and ahead of this year's race, I am going to look at the drivers who have won the most times around the streets of Monaco. Monaco, of course, forms one of the points of the Triple Crown alongside the Indianapolis 500-mile race and the 24 Hours of Le Mans. It is one of the most prestigious races to win, not only in Formula 1 but also in motorsport. It's one of the most iconic sporting events, full stop, in my opinion. It is without a doubt up there. But which drivers have won the most around this track? Well, there's a lot to choose from. This event goes back almost 100 years to 1929, when William Grove Williams, yes, that was his actual name, won the first ever Monaco Grand Prix. Since then, we've seen many heroes of Monaco and many drivers who have won multiple times. Here are all the drivers that have won at least 3 times around Monaco over the decade. And the first driver is the only driver in this list who is currently still racing in Formula 1. It's, of course, Sir Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton is still the most recent winner for McLaren around Monaco, having won here in 2008. He also won here in 2016 and 2019 for Mercedes. 2019 was an emotional one, of course, because it was shortly after the death of Niki Lauda, a certified legend of Formula 1 and someone who, of course, won back-to-back here in 1975 and 1976, driving for Ferrari. Compared to some other tracks on the calendar, Monaco is actually one of Hamilton's worst circuits, but I wouldn't describe anything as a bad track for him, given the fact he's won here 3 times. He did get lucky here in 2016 with, of course, that pit stop for Ricciardo that went horribly wrong, and in 2015 he was rather unlucky not to win because he stopped and both Nico Rosberg and Sebastian Vettel stayed out. Speaking of Nico Rosberg, though, he's another 3-time winner around this track, winning his 3 Grand Prix in back-to-back years, winning here in 2013, 14 and 15 for Mercedes. 2013 he was just the fastest guy in qualifying, put it on pole and started from pole and won the race. 2014 though was a bit more controversial. He allegedly ran down the escape rope at Mirabeau on purpose, bringing out the yellow flags and preventing his teammate Lewis Hamilton from setting the fastest lap, and he later went on to win the race. This was one of the first flashpoints between these two drivers as they turned from the best of friends into the worst of enemies at AMG Mercedes. 2015, like I said, he kind of looked into that thanks to Hamilton's pit stop, but of course Hamilton did not have to make that pit stop. That was kind of on him, and on the team as well. They kind of miscalculated this, feeling all kinds of conspiracy theories, but hey, Hamilton went on to win the championship anyway that year. But let's talk about some more British drivers. A bit of British bias coming in here? No chance about that. But let's talk, because the drivers from the UK have done very well over here over the years, and 2 of these that definitely are applied to that are 2 racing knights, Sir Stirling Moss and Sir Jackie Stewart. Jackie Stewart won here 3 times in the 1960s and 70s, winning here in 66, 71 and 73. He later went on to win the World Championship in 1971 and 73. Sir Stirling Moss became the first driver to ever win at Monaco on 3 occasions, winning in 1956, 1960 and 1961. Moss, of course, for me, without a doubt, being the best driver to never win the World Championship in Formula 1. He was absolutely incredible, and Monaco was his playground really when it came to that. But let's get on to the only 4-time winner of the Monaco Grand Prix, that being the only French world champion. It's, of course, Alain Prost. Prost was incredible around Monaco, just like someone else who we will get onto as well very soon, his McLaren teammate during some of these races. He did win here many times, and of course all for McLaren, interestingly. Of course, won a lot of races for the likes of Renault, Ferrari, Williams, but he never won for any of them round here. All of his wins were for McLaren. He did so in 1984 in controversial circumstances during absolutely torrential rain conditions, where the race was stopped early and half points were awarded. Arguably that actually cost him the championship. Had he finished even 2nd place on full points, he would have got more points than what he did for finishing in 1st with half points. And of course, he missed out on the championship to Niki Lauda by just half a point that season. He backed it up though with wins in 1985, 1986 and 1988 after a certain somebody crashed out of the race when he was absolutely miles in the lead. We will talk about him very shortly though. But the 5-time winners, there are 2 5-time winners of the Monaco Grand Prix, and the more recent to achieve that feat was the great Michael Schumacher. Schumacher won here for Benetton in back-to-back years in 1994 and 1995 on his way to his first 2 championships in Formula 1. He also won here for Ferrari in 97, 1999 and in 2001. Of course, Schumacher does have some controversial history as well with Monaco. He stopped by the Rascasse and deliberately brought out the yellow flags in order to try and claim pole position in, I believe it was 2006 off the top of my head. He crashed out from the lead with Juan Pablo Montoya. I say that, I mean he was hit by Juan Pablo Montoya under the safety car in 2004 as well. 1996 he could have won. I think he started on pole that year, but unfortunately for him he crashed out on the first lap in a race that only 3 cars managed to take the checkered flag, incredibly. Schumacher, like a lot of tracks, was very good around here, but he was probably not quite as good as Mr. Monaco himself. Graham Hill won here on 5 occasions in the 1960s to claim that title. What a driver he was round here. Tragically, his son, Damon Hill, did not manage to win ever around Monaco, rather famously, but his dad was an absolute beast around here, winning back-to-back on 3 occasions between 1963 and 1965. He also won here in 1968 and also 1969. Nice. Incredible was Graham Hill around Monaco, and he held the record for the most victories around the Principality for a very long time, until a certain Ayrton Senna rocked up on the scene. Senna was a qualifying master in Formula 1, holding 65 pole positions, and that served him very well around Monaco, where qualifying is so important. He managed to win here in 1987 for Lotus, and also won another 5 times for McLaren between 1989 and 1993. 5 times in a row. And it could have easily been 7 times in a row had he not crashed out from the lead in 1988. He was miles clear. He produced one of the greatest qualifying laps of all time during that race weekend. 1.5 seconds, not faster than most of the competition, faster than his teammate Alain Prost around a short circuit in Formula 1. Senna was a master of Monaco. He could have also won here on his first appearance back in 1984 had the race not been red flagged, although looking back on it now, I get why it was red flagged. They would never even attempt to race during those conditions in the modern era, so honestly I've kind of mellowed in my opinion of that. I used to think it was a bit of a burlesque conspiracy. Maybe that could be a video. You guys love conspiracy videos. Maybe I'll do one on 1984 actually instead of 1982. That sounds like a poll on YouTube. I'm going to do that. I've just thought of that on the fly here. But yeah, Senna, the master of Monaco. Hamilton, the closest driver on the current grid to catching him with 3 victories. Fernando Alonso and Max Verstappen also have 2 victories to their name as well. Alonso is not going to add to that anytime soon. Verstappen, though, he could join the 3-time winners if he manages to win this weekend in Monaco. But who is your pick for the Monaco Grand Prix this weekend? Who is taking the checkered flag? Who is having dinner with the Prince of the Principality? Yes, the winner does actually get to have a meal with the Monarch of Monaco. So, your thoughts in the comments below, guys. The Monaco Grand Prix is on this weekend, guys, and ahead of the race, we have a new rule that has been in place for this season's event. For the first time ever at Monaco, we have a mandated 2 pit stop rule. Instead of the standard 1 pit stop that is required in dry conditions, all drivers must run 3 sets of tyres. They must stop at least 2 times during the race. This is the first time that Formula 1 has put this rule in for Monaco, but I'm going to answer the question, is this going to liven things up in the Principality? Because frankly, a lot of the times in recent times with how big these Formula 1 cars are, they just seem impossible to race around this circuit and impossible to pass pass, I should say, really, because qualifying is still incredible around Monaco. Watching these cars go hell for leather around the barrier-lined streets of the Principality is something that's one of the greatest spectacles in all of motorsport, not just Formula 1. But is this pit stop rule going to liven things up? Well, I certainly think it's going to help, and at least it's going to prevent a situation like we saw last year, where if we get an early red flag, it'll prevent the guys from just changing their tyres and basically running a no-stop race for the entire duration. For that to happen now, you'd have to have 2 red flags during a race, which of course is possible, especially around Monaco, but it is very unlikely. So we're unlikely to see a repeat of effectively a literal procession like we saw last year. Something else to bear in mind as well. I mean, I'm a big Monaco defender. I think it deserves to be on the Formula 1 calendar, even though I have to admit, anybody will admit, that recent viewing around this circuit has been pretty dull in Formula 1 terms. There's still always storylines. I mean, yeah, last year's race was terrible, but at least we got the incredible victory of Charles Leclerc in his home race, the first since Louis Chiron back in, the 30s, the 20s, to win his home race around Monaco. That is a storyline, and we could well see an incredible storyline again this weekend. McLaren, for example, even though they've been really dominant in recent times, especially this season, they haven't won around Monaco since 2008. It was Sir Lewis Hamilton driving for the team back then who took victory at Monaco. That's the last time they actually won there. And any kind of victory for Max Verstappen at this point is incredible. We saw an unbelievable drive from around Imola, and you can't rule out the likes of the Ferraris and the Mercedes potentially upsetting the order and getting a surprise podium. It is all possible. Hell, even Williams, if Williams qualify well, they could well get a podium this weekend. They're on fire at the moment. They are incredible. So there's always storylines, there's always entertainment, but will this liven things up? Well, I think it's got potential to, because instead of just running the soft and the medium for the entire race and that being the only viable race strategy, now they have to actually run 3 sets of tyres. Not 3 sets of different tyres. I do believe they still only have to use 2 different compounds of tyres, but they have to use 3 sets. So we'll probably see every driver run a soft, and a medium at some point during the race. But do you go soft, medium, soft? Do you go soft, soft, medium? Do you go medium, soft, soft? I think the absolute majority of drivers will start the race on the soft tyre because that offers optimum grip, and the best time to overtake around Monaco, the easiest time to overtake, is for the start. The first corner going through Saint-Devote before everybody gets settled into a rhythm, that is very much the easiest time to pull off an overtake. So I expect everybody to start on the soft, really. There might be the odd person on the medium, perhaps, but given the likelihood of an early red flag or an early safety car, I would very much heavily wager that drivers will start on the soft, then go to the medium and then the soft, but we may well see some as well go soft, soft, medium. And it also depends as well on safety cars. If we get a safety car through the race, some people may choose to stop at that point, give up track position, something that you don't ever see around Monaco. Normally it's all about track position. Track position is king. Do you gamble and do a tyre change a little early under a VSC or a safety car and give up track position, but also run into traffic? Can you overtake through that traffic? There's going to be a lot of questions there. So while I don't think it's the silver bullet, because the ultimate cause of Monaco being so dull usually is the width of the cars and the lack of overtaking opportunity, something that's a tale as old as time from Monaco. I remember looking at old race reports from the 1960s and 70s, video reports and also written reports as well, where even back then, a lot of the people, a lot of the journalists in Formula 1 were saying that, Formula 1 has outgrown Monaco. It's time to move on. This place is just not suited. This is a throwback to the old days of street racing in the 1920s and 30s, when Grand Prix first started to become a real spectacle in world motorsport. And we're still racing here almost 100 years after the first Monaco Grand Prix, all the way back in 1929. So there's a lot really when it comes to it. I think it will help, but I don't think it's going to automatically mean that this race is incredible. I don't think it's going to be that particularly entertaining, but there's going to be a lot of storylines, a lot of strategy, and I think it's going to help. But your thoughts in the comments below, guys. Will this 2-stop rule liven up Monaco at last? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Like, share, comment, subscribe as always. If you want to see more news and opinions on the world of motorsport and Formula 1 just like this, have a fantastic day wherever you are in the world today, and we'll see you very soon. Have a good one, guys.